Back here now on the Chip Shot Football Podcast to continue on and talk about another big game with a lot of big implications on it as well. From yesterday, a AFC North battle between the Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens, a rivalry, a game just I think everyone's known and has gotten used to being close, ugly, very tightly contested all in all. And, this contest really didn't disappoint at all. The Steelers played its first AFC North game of 2024, and it's going to be the first of 6 that they still got to go through, obviously, over the next few weeks here. But there was no better way to start this gauntlet of a second half the Steelers have to face with a win over their bitter rivals. And with an impressive win over Baltimore, now the Steelers go to 8-2 and are riding a 5-game winning streak heading into their Thursday night game here just in a few days. So they win by a score of 18-16, and Baltimore, on their side of things, now lose their second division game, their first one to the Cleveland Browns in surprising fashion, both of them on the road as well. The Ravens drop to 7-4 and lose, and because of the loss, they go to the 6th seed now instead of the 5th seed. The 5th seed is now with the Los Angeles Chargers. So not a great weekend overall for the Ravens in terms of how they played, but also the results elsewhere, right? They needed the Bengals to win to kind of keep that pace with the 5th seed, but unfortunately, as things stand right now, they are not there. As of right now, they're the 6th seed. So that's where the Ravens stand. I don't think that's where they're going to finish, but it's been a pretty crazy, day reacting to the games from yesterday, and just more on the Steelers, and really the level of play against the Baltimore Ravens recently has been something to just take note of, because other than just the regular games against the Ravens, the Steelers are now 4-0 with Russell Wilson as their quarterback, and just overall they continue their recent dominance over the Ravens. Like I said, they've won the 7 of the last 8 matchups against the Ravens. Lamar Jackson is now 1-4 against Pittsburgh in his career, throwing 5 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. And also, in terms of just this season and how things have gone, why I mentioned this was such a huge test for the Steelers is because their defense has been playing great, up until this week, where they've done great against teams that might not be that great when you look back on it. You look at the Falcons, the Broncos now in hindsight, but in there have been, the Raiders, the Colts somewhat, and the Jets, the Giants, these teams that aren't really posing a threat. So there are some questions, or at least I had some hesitancy. I know the Steelers defense is good, they have good players, but what was it going to be like, facing a juggernaut type of offense like the Ravens had with Derek and Lamar, and even guys that they added, Deontay Johnson was there, obviously now coming over from the Panthers. Rashad Bateman I thought was playing better. Zay Flowers, he's one of the receiving leaders in the NFL currently right now. I think he's top 5 at least, so he's having a great year as well. So with all those weapons, with all the game plan around the run and everything like that, and how the Ravens were scoring the most points per game, or the second most points per game in the entire NFL, this is where I wanted to see how the Steelers would react. And, they held Baltimore to a season low, 16 points, and the lowest passing yards as well, with 207. We're excluding the games where they dominated the other teams, like the Cowboys and the I can't remember the other team, but regardless, it was one of those games, the Cowboys and some other team. We're excluding those in all these other close games where, they had to pass, to ultimately win the game. This was the lowest amount of passing yards that Lamar and this Ravens offense has been held to all year. And also, the quarterback rating, I think that was a big deal for Lamar, and he was having a great year, just all in all, seeing the quarterback rating over the last 8 games. He had recorded a passer rating over 108 straight games before yesterday, where he posted a 66.1, which was the lowest, obviously, this season for Lamar. So it's just a little bit to give an idea of where the luck has been for the Ravens against the Steelers. And you might call it luck, you might call it something else, but the Steelers have really had the Ravens number over the last few years. And I thought there was a chance it could be altered with yesterday's game, but the Steelers came out on top as well. That was, though, without scoring a single touchdown. It's the second time this year the Steelers have won a game without scoring a touchdown. They hit 6 field goals in week 1 against the Falcons, and they still won. And it was the same story yesterday. Great defensive performance, turnovers, and, really limiting the Ravens' offense. But Chris Boswell, nobody really ever talks about him in any conversations or anything like that, and I don't really think they care about it. But he's been as good as advertised and even better. I think he's only missed 1 field goal this year. And he just continues to do his thing. Whenever they get over half field to the opposing team's 45-yard line, it seems like that's in Boz's range, and more often than not, really, he's made every single kick so far this year. So that is great to see. He hits 5 field goals in this game, where his counterpart, Justin Tucker, for the Hall of Fame career that he's had, this year's been a little bit of a bumpy road. He missed 2 field goals in this game, which, looking back on it, would have obviously made the difference as well. But he missed 2 field goals there in the first half, and it obviously affected how the game went for the Ravens to not get anything back from those drives. But it's crazy how the Steelers this year are 2-0. We're not scoring a single touchdown, while the rest of the NFL is 2-18. When any team doesn't score a touchdown, it's 2-18. So it's pretty remarkable. Just again emphasizing the defensive performance by the Steelers in these games, and comparing it to Cincinnati and all their luck, or the lack of luck, that they've had this year since Mike Tomlin. I thought this stat was crazy. Since Mike Tomlin took over in 2007, no team has played and won in as many one-score games as Pittsburgh from 2007 up until now. They have a 61% win percentage rate in one-score games, and they're 5-2 this year in one-score games as well. So these tight moments, it feels like it's personified by the Steelers. They live for these moments, and more often than not, just like the stats show, They come out with wins. They know what to do. They feel comfortable in these moments. Something that we've praised the Chiefs, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes about. The Steelers are, maybe not to that level, but for the majority of time with Mike Tomlin there, they've always been very comfortable in these one-score games. So I didn't think that was just something to breeze over. But what was crazy about this too, comparing it to Cincinnati just last week, I saw something that Joe Burrow threw 9 touchdowns against the Ravens this year and lost both games, and the Steelers didn't score a single touchdown and they beat the Ravens, which I think just emphasizes more the defensive emphasis that the Steelers have and the great defense that they have, but also the Ravens, not the Ravens, the Bengals. The lack of defense, the lack of standing up in these big moments is something that is a cause for concern. But just overall, the way the game went, really, in the first half, just 3 field goals by the Steelers to score 9 points in the first half, and the Ravens did get a touchdown as well. So it was 9-7 going into halftime. After, of course, Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals, but also in the first half there was 2 turnovers by the Steelers defense that again were big points of emphasis in this game. Nick Herbig forces a fumble on Derrick Henry in the first drive or early in the game, and the Steelers get a field goal out of it. And then also late in the first half, Patrick Queen, the former Baltimore Raven, strips Isaiah Likely, and they recover that fumble as well. But it was still only a 2-point game, and from that point on into the second half, the Steelers again hit a couple more field goals, but it was also an incredible interception by the rookie linebacker Peyton Wilson, where he kind of got rubbed up on with the pick route that the Ravens had. So he was trailing Justice Hill all the way down the field, and he got an arm in the passing lane in between the ball and Justice Hill and managed to rip it out somehow. So it was the 3rd turnover that the Steelers forced, and even still, with the 3 turnovers, the Steelers only managed to get field goals. So it never really felt like it was out of reach, and it got to a point after an interception by Marlon Humphrey in the end zone that it came down to the final possession, right? The Ravens only trailing by 8 points. They go down, they score a touchdown, and of course, like most of these games are decided by 3 points or less. It came down to the 2-point conversion where the Ravens needed to get it in order to tie this game up and possibly send it into overtime. But again, the Steelers defense prevails. Nick Herbig completely blows up the play. He prevents, the crack block coming in from Nelson Aguilar. I think I remember it was Nelson Aguilar. He prevents that. He bumps into the guard in the center, pulling towards the left side, and because they get, stopped there, Nick Herbig gets in their way. They can't go out and try and block Joey Porter Jr. He sets the edge and he tackles Lamar Jackson, and the whole play just doesn't look great because Nick Herbig and Joey Porter Jr. did a great job of just blowing it up. So while it looks like it was a dumb play or anything like that, it would have worked pretty well if Nelson Aguilar got that crack block down on Nick Herbig. The guards get out to block Joey Porter, and maybe Lamar cuts it back or something like that. But again, credit to the Steelers defense to really put a stamp on the kind of work they've been doing this year, with Patrick Queen coming over, Deshaun Elliott coming over, Payne Wilson playing some big downs for them as well. They've got good production from this team. It looks like they have playmakers on each level of that defense, but also something that was going to be a big problem, obviously, with this game. Derrick Henry only getting 13 touches in this game for 65 yards and zero touches in the fourth quarter. And not only is that just egregious and insane to even think about that for Derrick Henry, and I don't know how to explain why you don't give Derrick Henry the ball more often, especially in the fourth quarter, because this game never felt like it was getting away from them. They were always right there. So for them to just strictly pass the ball, it reminds you of the AFC Championship game where they got away from being themselves, from running the ball, and it cost them in the end. And we're seeing the same mistakes here by Todd Monken again. And if you were going to go out and get Derrick Henry, it was for moments like this. It was for moments like one-score games where you don't want to get away from what you're doing, continue to run the ball with Derrick Henry. And I just thought the Ravens were doing a little bit too much in that aspect, and we're helping the Steelers defense in that regard a little bit more, not really having to worry about Derrick Henry. So that will be a criticism that people will have of Baltimore, but it was the intangibles that really decided this game, other than some questionable decisions by them to not give Derrick Henry the ball. You look at the Ravens, they were 2 of 2 in the red zone, where the Steelers were 0-4. But it came down to the ugly, not really lavish parts of football that I thought won the Steelers the game more often than not. They ran the ball more than Baltimore. Baltimore had 12 penalties in this game to the Steelers 7. The Steelers had more time of possession as well, and the 3 turnovers that the Steelers forced compared to the Ravens 1, I think all of that made the difference, and they usually make the difference in one-score games like these. So I'm sure the Ravens will be kicking themselves, thinking that they should have won this game. That could be a good argument, in all honesty, but it's been more of the same, getting in their own way for the Raiders game, this game, the Chiefs game as well. So they're going to be fine. The Ravens are going to be fine, but I'm sure they would have loved to win this game and, get more in control of their own destiny in the division. But it is what it is now. The Steelers get a big win, and they're on a short week now because they'll play on Thursday Night Football against the Cleveland Browns. But we're not going to go too far from this division, because now we're going to talk about Sunday Night Football, the game between the Chargers and the Cincinnati Bengals, a game that I thought the Bengals would win because they needed to get this win to keep their playoff hopes realistic, in all honesty. But unfortunately, they came away with a loss, and we'll dive into why that is, the Bengals, and why they've been so disappointing in big moments where it feels like Joe Burrow's doing everything that he can, but the rest of the team isn't stepping up. So we'll get to that after a couple of seconds here. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.